Welcome to today's edition of Weather to Watch. Among other things, watching a wet weather system that'll be slowly advancing over the next few days from the south central plains through the deep south. Also, chilly air caps the northern end of that advancing system as it continues to slide to the east. And we also are watching a tropical storm in the tropics in the Caribbean, and also some other changing weather patterns, as well as an outlook for the month of November. All that's coming up. Hi, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Here's a look at the visible satellite loop on this Wednesday afternoon. Very clear that we have a huge storm spiraling over the eastern Great Lakes. Very obvious. Uh, Aside from that, though, much of the country is actually enjoying pretty quiet weather through all this swath here. And there's another little swirl in the atmosphere, not quite as pronounced, but still pretty significant. Also, we see a lot of storm clouds surging into the Pacific Northwest as well. Little educational tour here. So this is the 500 millibar chart. If you watch my video, you know I almost always show this. And because it's a good approximation of what the atmosphere is doing. So 500 millibars is really a height where a certain pressure, 500 millibars, is found. And it's a good way, it's in the middle of where all the weather happens in the troposphere. So it's a good way to kind of sense, it's a good way to imply what's happening at the surface. It's also a good way to imply what's happening at the jet stream level, which are in two opposite directions from where this is. Anyway, that was a lot to just say that we do have this storm in the upper atmosphere right here. You already saw it swirling, and I'm sure you already guessed that this swirling was connected with one as well. Now, the thing I'll do today, which is educational, is the yellow lines I just overlaid were the isobars at the surface. So these are traditional low and high pressure systems you probably learned about or heard about. Again, this was in the middle of the afternoon. And one thing you can always count on is that high pressure systems like this, you can almost consider this to be one high, even though it's broken into two cells, are going to be somewhere between the ridge of high pressure, which is where these red lines rise, and the trough of low pressure, which is usually indicated by a dashed line, where these lines tend to fall or sink toward the south. So high pressure is in this area here. And then low pressure is usually found either off to the east of the low or right underneath it, or in this case, kind of a combination of both, really. And if this low were on top of that low, we would call it a stacked weather system, and it would be slow moving and occluded. If this low were maybe more out here, or a new one were to form here, let's say around New York, it will have occluded with new development on this side. So that's just a little meteorology tour for you today on this Wednesday. Here is the European ensemble, and this is beginning a couple of days ago on Monday, but it shows the general 500 millibar anomaly, which means where is it below or above normal from where you expect it to be. Again, remember, dips to the south like this are troughs, generally associated with stormier weather, and dips to the and rises to the north like that. Sometimes that's indicated by a squiggly line like this, is a ridge. And if it's a blue color, it means, yeah, for this time period, it's a little bit below normal to see this dip as significant as it is. This ridge, on the other hand, at least the northern part of it, is not all that unusual, whereas the southern part is showing a little bit, that yellowish color is showing, yeah, that's a little unusual for this time of year. For the temperature, again, you're going to find cooler temperatures where the high is on the back of these lows. So Great Lakes states right straight to the eastern coast of the United States, with the exception of maybe Maine. And then Texas is forecast to be on this 7-day period starting back on this previous Monday to be a little bit above normal. And indeed, if we look at these high temperature trends, Thursday, that is holding up to be very true in Texas. The orange colors are above normal readings. The numbers are the actual highs at the cities. So tomorrow, Thursday, Chicago will be at only 53 degrees. Same for Detroit. Duluth, only 45. Meanwhile, it'll be 84 in Dallas and close to 90 in the western part of Texas. Skip ahead 2 days to Saturday, we have a weather system advancing. Remember the rain possibilities I showed you? That and the fact that it'll be cloudy with drawing in a little bit of cool air, but mostly it's because of the rain and the cloud cover that these readings will be below normal. This is just the last high on the back end of that upper level trough, still kind of hanging out in the northeast. And this is a mark of return flow above normal temperatures in Montana and the Dakotas. And then we move ahead to Monday. The east is still cool, the northwest is still cool, and then the central United States sees a little bit of a warming trend with 60s and 70s and even 80s still showing up. course, as we get into the last week of October here, you're expecting to see freeze warnings and frost advisories, and the weather is delivering on that with frost advisories from East Kentucky straight up into Indiana, Illinois, and back into even as far west as Kansas and Nebraska, extending as far north as Minnesota. Now, in a minute, you'll see the low temperature maps here, and it's going to be kind of funny to you because you're going to say, well, shouldn't there be freeze warnings where I'm about to show you below freezing temperatures? Well, no, not. They've already had their hard freeze. So this is really only a warning that's issued to say, hey, if you're growing something, it's about to come to an end. Also, I didn't update this, but there's a freeze watch for the eastern end of this that was just issued before I recorded this. Anyway, low temperatures Thursday, which would be tomorrow morning. See here again, the freezing line is the blue, but the freeze warning was only down here. So it's really only these areas here that are new to the whole freeze thing, whereas these guys have already had it. Their growing season has probably come to an end. And if we move this ahead to Friday, the next morning, this whole thing shifts to the east again, and some of those advisories were meant to be for not tomorrow morning, but for Friday morning as well. Well, now we haven't had a lot of widespread severe weather outlooks here, but on Thursday, which is tomorrow, we are looking for a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk for severe weather from Oklahoma City to Lubbock and straight back up to the northwest to Santa Fe. But then on Friday, we actually have a slight risk issued for western Texas and right around the Odessa Midland area and points south and southeast of there. So that's interesting. And you may have seen on social media some talk about severe weather in the Central Plains on Monday. The models are still in disagreement over the timing of that jet streak. The upper level system that's causing this, though, is I think going to rob a lot of the moisture and energy from whatever develops behind it. So I'm kind of dubious on the whole Monday severe weather thing. Not impossible, but I think the models will have to come into agreement, and this system that's causing this would have to shift in a fundamental way before we were able to get the atmosphere recovered enough for that to be a possibility. But it's certainly something I'm keeping an eye on. Again, that would be Monday of next week. Two major wet weather systems. This one will focus on a lot. These are lake effect rains, not snows, but it's not quite cold enough for that. But the effect is the same. You're picking up colder air is picking up latent heat and moisture from the lakes, which are still relatively warm for this time of year, and depositing it as precipitation. It just so happens it's not cold enough for that to be anything else but snow. But again, wait a month or so, and if we had the same kind of setup, these would easily be lake effect snows, also there in the UP of Michigan. Then the other thing is lots of moisture with a little bit of a jet stream flow, not a little bit, a lot of it, of jet stream flow into Oregon and Washington with high precipitation rates in the mountainous areas. That would be snow and rains in the valleys in between. Let's focus in on this central plains system. So we're looking at 2.4 inches where I live here in Springfield. This is a 5-day forecast, but really it's intended to be beginning late tomorrow and going through Friday and Saturday. We see 3-inch totals, 3.5-inch totals through Oklahoma. The driest air, I didn't update the drought index because really tomorrow morning is the new update based on data through early this week. So it would be old, but I can tell you right here is probably one of the driest areas on this particular map if you just zoomed in to this level. So, and we did get some rain last week, so that might have been diminished a little bit here in southwest Missouri, but we could still use anything that's printed on that map. As far as flash flooding is concerned, Friday there is a slight risk, which is the 2nd out of 4. And this is for the flash flooding guidance being reached or exceeded. So there is a swath from Oklahoma City down I-35 to Dallas and then back to the southwest a little bit where that could be an issue on Friday. Let's take a look at all the hazards now as we go forward here. So the heavy rain area just kind of continues to sink over the weekend into the south and east and then continues to progress through the deep south on the 25th and the 26th. Meanwhile, high winds across the front range of the Rockies up into the Dakotas. Whenever I start seeing this, I know that the jet stream is becoming a lot stronger and more active, and the momentum from that wind pattern starts to translate itself downward into this part of the world. Very common as we get into the winter season. And then we already saw there's a lot of surging high winds and precipitation, a little stormier in the Pacific Northwest. Now, this is Saturday through Wednesday. And then if we go to the Tuesday through Saturday period, It looks like it might be a little cool in the Carolinas and also parts of Virginia and Georgia. Warm in the northern lakes and in the southwest, and a little cool in the northwest. And on the precipitation side of that, wet across about 2/3 of the country, or at least now this is a forecast of confidence. So the darker the green, the more confident the forecasters are this will actually happen. But they are very confident that it will continue to be very wet in the lower elevations and snowy in the higher elevations through Washington and Oregon, even into much of next week. Visible satellite loop showing kind of a half disk here. You can see there's various storms swirling around here, but on the tropical side of things, Tropical Storm Melissa did form here in the last 24 hours. We'll take a look at the IR satellite loop of this. This is from the middle of the afternoon, but wow, pretty aggressive here. In fact, you can see gravity waves kind of emanating from this. That's these little circular patterns that keep growing in and out from the center here. Very cold top. So the storm hasn't formed a circulation yet, but I'm not sure why it shifted there. But anyway, it definitely is deepening. One thing about it, though, it is a slowpoke. In fact, if you look at the movement here, over the next several days, it really is meandering along a little bit to the northwest, then to the north, then to the northwest, then to the south. Now, it is forecast to become a major hurricane south of Jamaica, which is outlined here, and there is a tropical storm, I believe that's a watch in effect for Jamaica right now, with other advisories in effect for parts of Haiti. But again, I think this will change. If it continues to do this, that'll be good news for Haiti, maybe slightly worse news for Jamaica. This is the only storm really worth talking about, and you'll see over the next 7 days, the Hurricane Center has not really put a tag on anything. And in fact, the long range that was issued yesterday has nothing on week 2 and nothing on week 3 either. So pretty quiet. I don't know why I'm not getting a circle there. Give me a circle. There it is. And week 3, same thing. So pretty quiet, and not surprising that the tropical storm and hurricane season is really winding down because the frequency really starts dropping like a rock here in late October. We may get one other storm. It's not impossible. Now, just so you know, though, this is the names that we've gone through this year. Melissa's on the map right now. Nestor would be the next one if we get that opportunity. Here's a track of all those storms, all 13 of them. All of them were tropical storms or hurricanes except for a subtropical system, and that was Karen. That thing just kind of blipped up here. That's that one right there. And almost no one knew about that, and rightly so. It didn't really affect anybody. If you see purple on this map, that was a major hurricane on the upper level of the Saffir-Simpson scale. And if you see the red, that is a hurricane. So the official tally on this is we've had 12 named storms so far, which falls a little bit short of the forecast of 13 to 18. The hurricane actual total is 4. 5 to 9 was the forecast, and major hurricanes is the only one that's actually fallen into the range with 2 to 5 forecast. That was back on August 7th when there's about a 50% chance of an above normal season. It seems unlikely that will be achieved given the point in the season at which we are right now. And the last thing we'll talk about is a couple days ago, they issued the November temperature outlook. The Climate Center did. And they've got a pretty high confidence that New Mexico and Texas will be above normal, and a so-so confidence that much of the Southwest and Deep South will be, a little bit of Maine too. And then last graph will show you the precipitation forecast for the month of November. Maybe a little bit dry in the Carolinas, and definitely the wettest pattern is forecast to be high plains back into the northern part of the Rockies. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.